So if this is working correctly, yes, all right. So people should be able to see me if you're tuning in just now on YouTube. Hey, we haven't done a live video chat in a while, and there's probably a whole bunch of people who are going to be streaming in over the next couple of minutes, so I'll just talk informally for a couple minutes, and then we can start taking questions. So we've been all over the world recently. I just got back from the East Coast, talking to a whole bunch of people, Consumer Reports, Simpo, all sorts of stuff like that. But we also had SMX last week, and so that was actually a lot of people. Jack Menzel talked about personalization. We had Christian from the Google Plus team and all the Plus One stuff that he talked about. We also had Tiffany, who's actually a web spam engineer, but took a break to go to 3 different sessions, including Ask the Search Engines over at SMX. Tiffany also recently presented at a San Diego Small Business Conference, and I think both Tiffany and Wiz, Michael, are going to be going to Northern Virginia, because we've got a Get American Business Online sort of program that's actually been doing really well in a lot of different states. Like 500 people will show up and learn how to get a website, and then which is something that we're partnering with Intuit to do, but also learn about Google Analytics and Google Webmaster Tools and all that sort of stuff. So we're just coming off of all of those different conferences and places where you can talk to Google in person. So it's going to be a little quiet for a while in terms of face-to-face stuff. I'll be going to PubCon, so that is the Publishers Conference, although it started out talking about pubs like bars. And so that's in November. Every year, without fail, they do it on my wife's birthday, and so I don't know exactly what dates I'll be in, but I'll be sort of jetting in, doing at least a session or two. So hope to talk to a bunch of SEOs. And of course, we've always got, the Webmaster Forum, Twitter, my blog, all those other places where people can reach us. But that's just a few of the places that we've been recently. Wiz, so do you want to hop in for just a second, say hello? Hey, there's Wiz. So if you're in Northern Virginia, I think he and Tiffany are going to be talking about getting American businesses.
We're actually going to Richmond. Yeah.
Richmond?
Yes.
All right. Oh, did we lose video?
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Did we tweak something?
Okay, hold on. I think we're still broadcasting audio, so yes, we will be going to Virginia.
Uh-huh.
But let's see why we don't have the camera anymore. That is...
You can tell that this is
the fun of a live broadcast.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I can talk about a couple other things that I've been wanting to mention as well. So one thing that we've been doing is thinking a little bit about the stuff to talk about during Webmaster. Oh, yeah, there we are. On.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
we rebooted the camera.
Okay.
Too much fun. It's basically like a couple guys in front of a camera, and we get to be beta testers for some of the YouTube live streaming stuff, which is a ton of fun. By the way, there was somebody who asked, why aren't you doing a Hangout on air? And the reason is, well, Wiz has been going all over. I've been going all over. And he's leaving later this week to go all over again. So we were like, okay, several weeks ago, we're like, let's do a Hangout on YouTube, do the live stream. We'll do it Wednesday morning. And then yesterday they announced Hangouts on air.
Yep.
And, they're always doing so much stuff over there on Google Plus that you never know exactly when something's going to launch. And so we were like, wow, that would be really great. I don't know if we can set that up in one day, but we want to be doing more of these, right? And we want to be able to answer questions. And we also want to try out the Hangouts on air because it looks like a ton of fun. So we'll try that for the next version or the next time that we're going to be doing one. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so while we wait for people to trickle in and for questions to come in, I did want to mention one thing. So there was the pagination stuff. It's relatively complex, but basically it gives publishers a lot more granularity on how they want things to be treated in terms of rel equals next, rel equals previous, and how that interacts with rel canonical. And at the same time, it also lets users get to pages that are a little more useful rather than clicking 5 times to read an article. So publishers got options, users, it's a good win for them. But one thing that I absolutely wanted to make sure that I mentioned was something that Tiffany talked about last week. So I think I can bring up the... Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'll just switch it to the laptop. So this is a blog post that went out by Tiffany Anwiz just last week, and it's sort of summing up the state of the world a little bit. And let me see if I can also turn off that. Right, awesome. This is so much fun. Okay, so Wiz and Tiffany also made a video that just came out yesterday, and it sort of talks about the state of the world with respect to reconsideration requests. Because one of the things that we heard was that people were basically wanting to get a little more visibility in terms of reconsideration requests. And we've had a video that Brian White and Rachel had done a long time ago, but we wanted to sort of update that and talk about the stuff that we look at. And basically talk about, it's no secret that we have a team that takes manual action on web spam. Like every major search engine has a group that does that. But we wanted to talk about the process and how it works. And so the things that are specifically new within the last few months are we're alerting more people. So it used to be for things like hidden text, and now it's for more and more and more types of things that violate our guidelines. The other big thing is now when you do a reconsideration request, in the past we would say, well, we've processed it, right? So you would know that that it had either been processed by an algorithm or by a computer. Someone had sort of looked at it, or a computer process had kind of routed it to the right place. And people wanted more visibility on that. And so the change that we've been testing, and it's actually been really good. We were worried we might clue in spammers, but the results have been very positive. So I expect us to keep moving forward with it. But the change is basically this. When you do a reconsideration request, we will tell you in the vast majority of circumstances, yes, there has been manual action, and for example, you're okay now, everything looks good. There's been manual action, but you're still in violation of our guidelines. Or what actually happens the vast majority of the time is there has been no manual action regarding your site. Now, in some sense, if you get that reply back, you might be a little disappointed, like, oh, I thought there was something wrong and maybe I could get it corrected and Google could just, flip a switch. But the right way to look at it is if no one has taken any manual action because of web spam violations, then the only issues you might have could be algorithmic, which sort of says the power is in your hands. As you make changes and as Google recrawls and reprocesses those pages and sees those changes to your site, then the algorithms can change the way that they view your site, how they assess it, and basically our scientific opinion of how good a site is for users can change. So that's actually really nice. There's no huge downside to doing a reconsideration request. It's not like it will hurt you. In extremely limited circumstances, I could imagine if you had a very, 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 very spammy site and you did a reconsideration request, someone could look at it and say, oh my goodness, this is horrible, and start to dig into it more. But if you're just a regular person, the sort of person who's dialed in on this web call, the sort of person who just tries to make great websites, and you're worried that you might be affected by, a possible violation, it's a great time to just say, do a reconsideration request, and then you can find out you're okay, or no one's taken any action, or maybe action was taken and we still considered it in violation, because that helps you drill down on what's important to dig into. So I guess we can do some questions. Do +1s have any effect on search rankings? The Brian DeBell wants to know that. So good question, Brian. Right now, we're still studying it. We do use if people have blocked stuff in the search results. So if enough users who we believe are sort of trustworthy, or that we have some measure that they're not just a bot, have blocked a site, then that is one of the signals that we've rolled into Panda, for example. And so we do use the blocks. We're still looking at the +1s and how much of an effect that can have. It's definitely promising. We're excited about it, and we hope to figure out a good way to use that. But you don't want to rush into it. You want to make sure that it looks like a good quality win and not just throw in a signal because you've got it. Really good question. So I'll Ekfrazi, will you ever count negative meta keywords? I want a -free on my site. I guess so that you would never show up for the term free. We don't really have that. There's not an easy way to say I don't want to show up for this term, because in theory that could be a way that you could silence critics or not show up for negative stuff. Like, there's certainly value to, if you do a search, sometimes you get opposing viewpoints. And if you were to do a negative search or something critical, and you didn't show up even though you deserve to show up, then that's one reason why we'd be worried about having negative meta keywords. Yeah, so by the way, we did this blog post. It was just on my personal blog, but basically we're thinking about things to work on for 2012. And so if you have crazy ideas, that's the actual phrase someone else used, was crazy ideas that you think would be a really fantastic user experience. We've added search by voice, search by image, real-time in all kinds of ways, from Google Instant to Google pre-rendering the pages for Google Instant pages. Lots and lots of search quality changes. So if you have something that you really would love to see as a user, definitely feel free to stop by and leave a comment. I'll go by and moderate the comments on that blog post later today. And there's a whole bunch of different stuff that people might want to see, and it's really great if you tell us what you're interested in seeing. Nick Rochon says, my authorship markup still isn't showing in search results. So I would show up in the Webmaster Forum and ask about that a little bit. There's a guy, Sagar, who's a PM here, who's worked pretty hard along with the authorship guys to try to make sure that we support that. But it's the case that you still want to move forward a little carefully. You want to make sure that things look like they make sense. And so you don't want to just willy-nilly throw in every single person who marks up authorship, because you want it to be where if you see that picture, then it's a good sign. And people are like, oh, okay, this is something that's really useful. Native app versus mobile web, asks HJD 1984. Yeah, that's a really tough one, because you can get, at least for now, a much more fluid experience sometimes with apps. But if you write an app for every single platform in the world, iOS, Android, BlackBerry, Symbian, Windows Phone, WebPad, at some point you're doing a lot of stuff. So what a lot of people that I've seen are doing is they're sort of doing a lot of their stuff in HTML5 or in sort of a mobile stuff. And then the things that are only really suited or especially easier on the native platform, then they'll do that within the app. And so, HTML5 is getting better. It's getting to the point where you can do some pretty impressive stuff, like Netflix and the Google Music stuff that we've recently rolled out. You can actually do quite a lot of stuff with web apps. Over time, I expect web apps to get better and better and better. For now, there's still a little bit of an edge, probably, for a lot of developers in terms of the overall amount of flexibility you have with a native app. But it's one of those things where you have to play around and see what works for you. Wow. Okay, lots of good comments in the YouTube stream. So let me kind of look through that just a little bit. Will Google Plus let you customize your profile? Good suggestion. I have no idea, but I would suggest that, because those guys are actually iterating pretty quickly. So it might make sense. When can we expect Google Flights outside of the United States? So the people that worked on the Google Flight Search, which is at google.com/flights, they're just sort of starting out. This is as a result of the ITA acquisition. They're just now starting to be able to build products. And so they don't, for example, have the ability to search for first-class flights. And they don't have stuff outside the United States right now. Give it a little bit of time, though. They're definitely working hard, and I expect that they'll probably iterate pretty quickly. Someone in Germany says, good quality sound and picture. Yay, cool. We've got a high-quality camera, but otherwise it's like literally a shoestring operation. We have our... last time we had an on-air button, and the on-air button actually, the light bulb broke. So, we've got the metaphorical on-air here, but it's, sometimes lo-fi is kind of fun. How will the +1 on ads affect SEO? I don't expect a +1 on an ad to affect our organic ranking, just like buying an ad doesn't affect our organic ranking. It doesn't help or hurt in any direct way in our search results. So if you +1 on an ad, I think they do have the ability to show pictures of people underneath, and so that can be more social. That can be useful. So that's, it might be useful to have those +1s on ads to let someone know, oh, this is the skydiving place that I used. It's pretty helpful. But I don't think that they're going to have +1s on ads affect the search results. Certainly not to the best of my knowledge. I see a question from Barry Schwartz. Barry wants to know, Mac Hutz, why aren't you in Washington? I don't think I need to be in Washington. So Eric Schmidt, I think, is doing a hearing later today, and there's a lot of great people in the D.C. office who handle all kinds of misconceptions and debunk, the sorts of conspiracy theories that a lot of people come up with. You know, the ones where SEOs are like, no, you really can't buy a higher ranking on Google. But the rest of the world, I've certainly sat down with people and they're like, how does Google make money? Do people pay you and then they rank higher? And so there's a lot of misconceptions about how Google works. So I actually went to the East Coast last week. So I went to New York, talked to groups like Consumer Reports. That was a lot of fun because they do testing, and I talked about how we do testing of search changes. But I also did get to visit DC last week and talk to a bunch of people about how search works to sort of educate anyone who was interested. But they certainly don't need me in DC this week. They are doing a perfectly fine job without me. Matt Stannard says, do you, as I do, find the quality of the results for more technical queries has gotten poorer since the Panda update? I think Panda would be independent of whether any of those sorts of technical queries have gotten worse. Panda, again, is trying to return higher quality content by attempting to find or differentiate between the sources of higher quality content versus the lower quality content. That's relatively independent of whether a query is technical or not. And so in my experience, you know, you see a lot of sites like Stack Overflow that have done really, really well and that continue to flourish in terms of returning good technical queries. So I haven't noticed that myself, but always feel free to send examples, like the concrete example that's like 6 months ago this query worked well, and now when I do it I get 6 copies of the same, you know, programming documentation or something like that. That's the kind of stuff that the engineers here just love to get, and they'll debate endlessly, and, you know, can we make a change that'll make things a little bit better? So Denver De La Rosa asks, for you, what is better, Facebook or Google? Man, cut to the hard questions. So I have to admit, I deactivated my Facebook account about 1.5 years ago. The only thing I've really, really missed, other than occasionally hearing from high school buddies, is to sign up for turntable.fm. You have to have a Facebook account, so I can't get in and groove to the music because they won't let me in without a Facebook account. I do like Google Plus quite a bit. I think the APIs are a big step forward. The Hangouts are a huge step forward. So at the point where you could have like really nice meetings around the world, screen share your docs, like we might end up doing a lot more of that kind of stuff. I'm pretty excited about that. Okay, I'll duck to a few questions on the YouTube stuff. Will the age of domain pages have a preference in showing up higher in search results or ranking? So we do have a patent, my name's on it, where along with a lot of other smart people or the other smart people, their name is on it. I don't know whether I'm smart or not, but it's basically saying that you could use the age of various anchors, domains, that sort of stuff to sort of return better search results. And we've seen some registrars use that as an excuse to say, you have to register for 3 years or register for a longer period of time. And I wouldn't go overboard on that. We know that you need fresh information. We know that some old information can get really stale. And so we do try to figure out, you know, relative to a given query, whether it's better to have authoritative information, whether it's better to have something that really a query deserves freshness, that sort of thing. But it's not the case that just automatically having older content is going to, you know, automatically get you a ranking boost. If somebody's been around long enough, they will often have built up a reputation, and so they'll have more links, and so that can sometimes be confused with things. Joe Youngblood. So at this point, we're basically in a lightning round. I figure, you know, for the next half hour, I'll just answer as many questions as I can. Joe Youngblood wants to know, when is Panda 2.5 3.0 going to run? Yeah, I don't want to get into the numbering. Like, you could argue Panda 3.0 was really the launching of Panda for International for all languages other than Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. So the people who are splitting hairs over whether it's Panda 2.4 or 3.0, that's not as useful. But it is the case that we continue to iterate. So we've made many, many changes, you know, several changes over the last few months, even within Panda, trying to iterate, find new signals. You know, so you see a site like Danny Webb had complained, and then we find signals that say, okay, well, here's a way we can differentiate between this site versus, you know, the sites that might be a little bit lower quality. And so we do have more things in the pipeline. There are more ways that we're continuing to iterate. And we're, in general, thinking about ways to improve search quality. So that, for example, Amit Singhal had a blog post that came out, I think it was in June, that talked about, here are some of the factors to think about regarding Panda. And I think one of the things that we mentioned in the blog post, well, you know, think about how many ads you have on the page. You know, is there good stuff above the fold, or is it, you know, stuff that just crowds out the entire page? And even though that isn't a direct signal in Panda, that's something we started to look at a little bit more, like how much actual content is there above the fold, because if it takes the user a longer amount of time to find the content, or if it's really annoying when they land on the page because there's so much other stuff going on, then that can hurt the user experience as well. So we continue to look at all those kinds of signals and try to iterate. So it's in the same way that everflux is the notion of indexing always going on. There's an everflux in which we roll out every year over 500 different algorithmic changes, and we're going to continue to iterate on Panda just like we continue to iterate on all of these changes. Lots of questions about when Google Plus will be available for Google Apps users. I don't know. I hope, I know they're working on it, right? It's certainly a priority, but Google.com uses Google Apps, and so, it's the case that we want all Google users to be able to use Google Plus. So Michael Gray Wolf often hits us on that one and says, look, if I pay for Google Apps, I should be able to get the first-class citizen on all these different things. And I completely agree with him about that. At the same time, there's a bunch of different stuff that folks on Google Plus are trying to work on. And so that is high on the list, I know, but there's tons and tons of different things that people want in terms of features and functionality. And if you look at the evolution of like Hangouts, you definitely see a lot of people moving very quickly on that. Somebody's talking about why was it called Panda. There actually is a software engineer at Google whose last name is Panda. So it wasn't. We didn't refer to it in terms of an animal. There actually is a software engineer, and we now have several, or at least a couple, stuffed pandas around the Googleplex now. So from SMX Advanced and that kind of thing. Dealer Carlot wants to know what's the recommended priority value you can submit in a Google Sitemap XML file. If you say everything is high priority, then we might not take that as seriously. But if you say everything is sort of normal priority, and there's a few things that are a higher priority, then that can, perhaps be given a little bit more weight. Before you go too far down that path, though, let me give you a little bit of advice. If you run a blog or a content management system, it's possible for you to basically send out pings whenever you do an update. So there's lots and lots of pings. Google operates one. If you can ping blogsearch.google.com, you can ping Ping-O-Matic, which I think is WordPress, and in fact there are intermediaries like PubSub Hubbub and FeedBurner and Superfeeder I think is one, where basically when you do a blog post, it can sort of instantly notify the Ice Rockets, the Topsies, the blogsearch.google.com, all those kinds of guys. And so I would try to configure things. I think Blogger's set up by default. WordPress might be set up by default to do these kinds of things. If you can let us know about that kind of content being available, then over time I would expect us to look at that a little bit more to try to figure out, oh, this is the person that wrote this blog post. If it shows up first in one place on the web, then it's a little more likely that that's useful as opposed to a site that scrapes a lot. It might not be the first place you see that article, or even if it is, it's not usually the first place where you see that article. So that's an area that we're continuing to look at as well. Will we ever be able to view live content on mobile devices? I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what you mean by that. Like, you can do a lot of stuff. Basically, you can, at least on Android, you can basically pretend like it's a regular browser, I think... I don't know whether you'll be able to YouTube stream, but Hangouts are getting where they're more mobile, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, how's it pronounced? It's pronounced Panda. Dazu11223 asks, what do you think about Google Plus yourself? I like it a lot. At some point there was a guy earlier today who tweeted something like, I spend 6 hours a day on social media, so I kind of miss the days of email. And Google Plus, I didn't think I had extra room in me for more social media time, and yet I'm staying up later, kind of like lurking on Google Plus and enjoying all the good posts. And so that's a lot of fun. At some point, I've got like a big project that I'm working on that's not web spam related and not like super skunkworks, just annual sort of thing that we do every year at Google. And so I'm going to basically edit my Etsy hosts and take out the Reddits and the Imagers and maybe the TechCrunches of the world, so I can make sure I charge and make good progress on my stuff. But okay. A question from Twitter: why did Google rank my site without a snippet if my meta was all okay? If you think about it, we'll often look at the meta description and the query, and we'll try to figure out whether it's a good match, right? So if your meta description is all about MacCuts.com is a site by a Google employee, but the question was about Firefox and printers, then that might not be as good of a match. So we reserve the right to return snippets and description based on whether we think the meta tag is a good description or whether it's a helpful snippet versus not as much helpful. What's the impact of getting a Google bot found an extremely high number of URLs on your site? It's not like that's automatically something to worry about. Good question from AJ Cohn. But, it might be the case that you have canonicalization issues, like if you can slice and dice the data in 15 different ways, and there's a Cartesian cross product where you can get that and slice that in 15 different ways, you might end up having a ton of URLs where if you canonicalized a little differently, the page rank might be grouped or collected in one spot, and then it would be a little bit more helpful because with the page having higher page rank, it would maybe tend to rank a little bit higher. But it's often just a little something to give you an idea that it might be something to look into. There could be some issue where you've got a bunch, like an infinite crawl space, or a spider trap where you've got a ton of pages that are getting crawled. Someone wants to know, I'm unfamiliar with the term Hangouts. Can you define that term and give an example? So on Google+, you can start a Hangout, and you are basically using your webcam, and you can hang out with up to 10 different people. And they just yesterday introduced the ability where you can watch people who aren't in that first 10 can still watch. So Newt Gingrich, for example, was doing Hangouts on Google+, where you could actually ask Newt questions. What do you think of oil import fees and all those kinds of things. And only 10 people could participate, so they just added the ability for lots more people to watch that. So we'll try out whether Hangouts on air can make sense in general. Okay, Burn Some CDs just has a bunch of A's, but he said oops, so that's okay. Maybe the cat was on the keyboard. How should e-commerce websites handle rel equals author? In my opinion, it's independent of whether you're an e-commerce site. Rel equals author, in my opinion, is a good thing to do. It's like the semantic web is this notion of you're going to mark up everything and everybody will be able to infer all kinds of perfect relationships. But in terms of concrete uses, it's really, really helpful if you actually can do some very meat and potatoes kind of annotation. Like knowing that this particular person wrote this article can help us figure out whether it's a little more trustworthy. And over time, if we can move from a web that's completely anonymous, where everyone can blog spam and there's no consequences, to a world in which you can say, oh, here's a new author, and they left a comment, even if it's on a small blog or even if it's on a forum that is, maybe there's not a lot of links to it, that might still be a really good answer. And so I think whether you're an e-commerce site or not is kind of independent. Personally, I think I can't think of any downside to doing rel equals author, just because at worst you get a nice annotation where people can see it and know that it's a little more trustworthy than search results, and over time it might make a difference in our actual search results. Somebody asked about whether I ever use Facebook. I answered that, but I haven't used Facebook for about a year and a half. I haven't actually missed it that much. Will rel equal author be compatible with business Google+? I don't know exactly how the business pages. See, that's another big feature that the Google+ people, are trying to work on very quickly, and a lot of people want, but it's still going to take a little bit of time. I don't know exactly how that interacts with rel equals author. My guess is not that much, because one will be more, you have a profile on Google+, and the other one will be more markup of the actual web page or something like that. So I think that they should mostly be separate. SERP impact. Yeah, that one's a little complicated. Google Trends for websites seem to be getting more inaccurate by the day. Any revamp planned? I'm not aware of any revamp. I'm happy to pass that on, but if you reach out to those folks directly or if they have a forum, that's probably a little bit better for you to ask about directly. In my experience, it hasn't been that inaccurate. So if you have an example, those concrete examples are the ones that are really, really the most useful. Wow, lots of questions on Twitter. Okay. C. John Murch wants to know, can you schedule these weekly, like a Matt Google podcast? It's kind of fun to just hop on board and see how we can do this. I would love to do this a lot more frequently. So how long has it been since our last YouTube stream, Wiz?
I think it's been months at this point.
It's been months. It's been plural months. Just barely plural, so a couple months, 2 or 3 months. if we can continue to do these and have them not be too stressful, and you duck in, you answer a question, you duck out, I think that's pretty ideal. Podcasts, then it's a higher level of expectation, and that's an hour out of your week every single week. I do miss Danny's daily searchcast, and so if I could ever get something like Danny and I could have fun, or maybe I could get Brian White or something, and we can have fun. We might be able to do these a little more regularly, so we'll see how it goes. How can I make sure websites stealing my content don't rank with it? Do a DMCA complaint, do a spam report, especially if they are an actual spammer who's just scraping completely. And then I talked a little earlier in this stream about making sure that you ping Google. So they even have a thing called fat ping, in which the content sort of goes along. So it's not just there has been an update, but there has been an update, and by the way, here's the content of the post. If you can configure your site to do those kinds of things, then over time we might be able to do a little bit better on terms of doing authorship. Okay, continuing the lightning round. Mall Pete wants to know, are double 301s okay? Yes, they're totally fine. Pentagonal 301s are probably not okay. So 2 301s, no problem. 5 301s, probably not going to be able to flow PageRank through that. So you can chain them. If you do chain them, make sure they're 301s all the way along. Don't do 301s and 302s. RTComp, very kind, says you and Leo Laporte on a show together would be worth $1 million. Yeah, but Leo by himself is worth $1.5 million. So you're saying I'm worth negative, $500,000. But I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's fun to do these things. Somebody asks, where is the Orchid? We have a history of naming things after engineers. There is an engineer named Orchid, and every so often I see him around the Googleplex. Where is it? It's on the web. It continues to be popular in Brazil and to a lesser degree in India. And so, if people enjoy the Orchid, I think that's fantastic. Can you explain more or provide link for the ping thing in response to the scrapers? So asks John Paul Wade. So if you use, I think WordPress might be automatically set up, but basically there's a field in WordPress where you can say, when you do a post, who should I ping? And I think it might ping like Ping-O-Matic. If you do a search for like Ping-O-Matic and blogsearch.google.com, you'll find a few places to ping. In fact, I, in theory, could log into my blog and see who I ping. If you use FeedBurner, and a ton of bloggers do, disclosure, it is a Google product, but if you use FeedBurner, I think that also takes care of it for you. And you can basically set it up with PubSub Hubbub, which is this thing where it'll, if you send a ping, it will then go and it can send out all of those pings itself. So if you do a few Google searches, we can probably also do a blog post or something like that to talk about it. But I would encourage webmasters to look into that. Will the functionality of the streaming live video open to regular users, free or paid? Anybody's welcome to show up. It's a party in here, so hello to Argentina, and yes, anybody who wants to show up is absolutely welcome. Although if someone who's paid by Microsoft or something wants to ask a whole lot of questions, I reserve the right to say, you know what, there's more interesting questions over here. When are we going to update PageRanks again? Asks Jimendra. In general, it's every 3 or 4 months, and so I have to be honest. At Google, we have a script that runs every 3 or 4 months, and it will update the PageRanks. And we have evaluations, like for example, if MSN.com drops from its PageRank, from 7 or whatever it is down to 2, or from 8 or 9 or whatever it is down to 2, then we check that out. So we have some evaluation, but otherwise a lot of that stuff is just automated. Within Google, all the computation along with the human aspect of it, that is, if we think some links shouldn't count because someone's been buying links or selling links, that kind of stuff, all that's happening continuously. And so they're always being updated. It's just every 3 or 4 months we put that out. When will there be a rel equals author for the news industry? Why isn't there one now? Well, you can use rel equals author for the news industry. So CNET, I think New York Times have already implemented rel equals author. I think people are, we want the news industry to do well, right? Because they make great content, and if people find good content, then they're happy, and then they use the internet more, and they use Google more, and so it's a nice virtuous cycle. I don't know if we wanted to do anything specifically for the news industry, but I've talked to the news guys. They are thinking about, for example, the problem of, if you're a newspaper, you might have wire content, you might have some original content, and then you might have 3 or 4 articles a day or 1 or 2 articles a day that you're really, really proud of. And so they are thinking about, is there some way to highlight those kinds of really good articles? But you know, it's for them to figure out exactly when that might make sense to launch and whether it would be a good win for users. How can I get an internship at Google? I think if you go to google.com/jobs, you can apply there. It is getting not, you know, the summer internship season starts around January, February. So if you search for Google internship, you can apply. Does Google follow, no follow links? In general, no. Yeah, lots of stuff going on in Argentina. And from Greece. Hello. Yes. There's issues with Greek. It's all Greek to me. Go Big Blue. Excellent. All right, we have a UK fan. I wish you luck, the Roshanks. Unavailable. Oh, that's a good question. Monmouth Access asks, does unavailable after robots tag remove the page completely from the index so you don't have problems with 404? I don't know. We do have something that basically says how long to cache and then no longer show in the search results. I don't remember whether it's unavailable after, but I think that there was a solution that we used or that we abided by so that people could say, you know, I've got a news article and in 7 days it's going to go behind a paywall, so have this tag, and after 7 days expire it from the index so that, you know, it won't be found because people won't be able to find it if they land on that page anyway. So I think it might have been unavailable after, but I'm not 100% sure. Wow, there's so many questions. I thought if I talked quickly, I could answer all the questions. And you just give more great questions. And so, I don't know what to do about that. One person wanted to ask about top-level domains and the new top-level domains that people can do, and so I wanted to make sure that I addressed that. So, like, suppose you have... It's a complex topic. A lot of people are asking, should I buy my company's brand on this new top-level domain? And so there's a few layers to that, and I'll try to do a full video on this. But the first layer is we try to return the best content as long as we can crawl it, regardless of where we find it. And so that can be on a .com, that can be on a .fr, .de. We even crawl the .xxx domain. So if the best site is a porn site and it happens to be on .xxx, then we would want to return that. In the past, we've said that we don't look at the top-level domain in any way, shape, or form in terms of our scoring. I would probably try to put more nuance on that now and say, look, if we see that a particular top-level domain is really, really spammy, then that could affect your overall, the way that your search results rank. As far as whether to buy your brand name on a new TLD, that is really tricky. That's more of a personal decision because you kind of have to play off, you know, for this registry, how much will they respect copyright? Can you get it later if someone squats on it? So we're going to have to see how all these brand new domain names like .film or .movie or those kinds of things, how they materialize. But in general, Google expects to crawl valid URLs, you know, the .xxx's of the world. If it's a valid URL on a new TLD, we do expect to be able to crawl it. And in general, we want to be able to return good content. And so if the good content is on what some would consider an unusual TLD, we will still try to return it. Yeah, so AJ Cohn calls it brand blackmail by icon. Look, it's a controversial thing. Certainly, I can see if you're a bank, you might worry about people getting confused and phishing attacks, and so I see the potential for consumer confusion, but I think we're going to have to see how it all plays out. The important thing is Google will try to return the best content that we can, even if it's on an unusual TLD. So we'll see how things happen after that. Does Google identify automatic page redirection with JavaScript? We do try to do that, and in fact we've seen a few Russian spammers who are like, Google can't detect this kind of JavaScript page redirection, and it turns out when we ran those tests, we could detect that. So Google is getting smarter and smarter over time about being able to see and index JavaScript. And by the way, please, if you have CSS or JavaScript that you've blocked with robots.txt, it would be really helpful to unblock that, because if we're doing things like trying to make an image snapshot that we would show in the search results to let people know whether to click through on your site, then having that be unblocked is super helpful. So that's something to think about as well. Wow, so many questions. Can you show us the Android model you have behind you on the desk? Yeah. Wow, is this like the Android cookie jar or something? Oh. So there is a Google store, and and so if you have an internship at Google or you stop by Google, we also have a plush Android in my office. Wow, it's even got a little plastic, so that's pretty sturdy. So we could put porn cookies or anything in there.
You can actually put Android cookies in there. There's an Android cookie cutter, also in the Google store.
Are you serious?
With the recipe in it.
Yes. That's great. Oh my goodness. So even people who don't like cookies in their browser, they might like Android cookies. Streaming quality is excellent. Whose Google genius is behind this? Well, we actually did steal away a wonderful person named Colleen, who had worked a lot with Leo Laporte on getting his studio set up. And so Colleen was really, really nice about, and some other people were really nice about cobbling together a machine with a high-quality camera. So it's a lot of fun. I hope we could also try to use this for Hangouts on air and see if that works as well. But yeah, it's give Colleen props, because thanks to her, it's literally like, hey, I want to project something on the video. All I have to do is click here, and it's very easy to do. And in fact, you can do all kinds of weird things, right? Where you get the 8-second kind of delay, and then eventually you get the infinite loop and all that kind of stuff. Okay, I'll try to be normal again. It's very hard to pretend to be normal. Yes, someone says I should explain porn cookies for people who don't know what porn cookies are. When I wrote the first version of Safe Search, which thankfully is now maintained by people much smarter than me, I worked on trying to make sure that the precision and recall was very good, and so I had to send out an email that was like, can you help us test our porn filter by trying to find porn and seeing whether you can find it? And no one would reply, and no one would help me find porn. And so I went home to my wife, and I was like, these people won't help me find the porn. And she said, well, you just need a little something to push them over the edge. Just a little something that lets people know it's acceptable, and a little reward can go a long way. And so she had a great cookie recipe, and she made cookies. And then I was able to send out an email that said, if you find porn, I will give you a cookie. And then it turned into kind of a treasure hunt, and it became socially acceptable, and so a lot of people were helping me look for porn, and we still sometimes carry on that tradition. Like when the image search guys want to test out Safe Search on image search, sometimes they'll promise like porn cookies. So that was a little strange, and I've only had a few encounters where, like, there was one time, at one point I had a cubicle that was right outside Larry and Sergey's office in the very original Google building. And, I had to look for porn, because that's my job, because I was working on Safe Search. And so at one point somebody came and said, do you mind if we just put this whiteboard in front of your cubicle and block? Because, visitors come in, they see Larry and Sergey, and the first thing they see is an engineer looking at porn. And so that's kind of uncool. So would you mind putting this whiteboard up? And it's, and so, you have to apply good judgment, of course. But yeah, so that's the story about porn cookies. Okay, so if I kept going, there would be an infinite number of questions continuing on forever. And, okay, one more. Mike Halverson wants to know, will you be growing a mustache for Movember? That is, Mustache November. I hadn't thought about it, because I hadn't got anything for November. I might actually do that now that you have asked. Because, why not? My grandfather turns 100 years old in November, and why not freak him out by showing up with a mustache, right? That should be completely fine. 30-day challenge-wise, officially, my 30-day challenge this month is learning to ride a unicycle, and I am failing miserably. I basically have narrowed it down to one problem. The one problem is I keep falling off. So if I can solve that one problem, I think I'll be pretty good at it. But there are a bunch of people at Google who are, I've gotten the web spam team, several people, in the 30-day challenge for next month. For October, we're going to try to go vegan, right? So there's actually like a vegan cafe. So for lunch at least, we can show up and we can get the, porridge or whatever they're going to give us, the fake meat. And so for 1/3 of my meals, I'll be okay. And I think cereal is vegan. Maybe I'll have soy milk. So I really like. We'll see how that 30-day challenge goes. But if anybody wants to join me, or even do a meatless Monday, to try going a little vegetarian, my wife is like, "No way am I going vegan. Oh, maybe vegetarian." But so that's my 30-day challenge for October. So maybe a mustache in November. That's actually a pretty simple, easy one. So good question. Okay, so if I stayed, I could. Oh man, everybody wants me to do the mustache. Okay, all right. I think I'm committed. It looks like a mustache in November. Do I have? Oh, I'll have PubCon, so I'll have like weird stubbly. Oh, it'll be fine. Okay. So I could keep answering questions, but rather than go for an hour and a half and get you guys really bored and tired and irritated, and to make it easier, where I kind of want to do it again because there's a whole lot of energy, let's just go ahead and cut it off so you can make it to any 11 a.m. meetings you have. Thanks very much, everybody. Hope you had a good time. This was fun. I'm sure we'll keep doing it again pretty soon. And thanks for watching. All right. Cool.